You're on.
Okay, we're back at House Education on Wednesday, April 1st. We are going to do a run through of the changes that we have made. Understanding, of course, that the guidance, the groupings, and the CISA map are sort of, that language is still to be incorporated. What you will see is not, it won't be in a document that's printed yet, but one thing is the allocation or the appropriation for CISA starting up CISAs, and facilitators and study committee grants. So that's where we are. The money for everything here comes out of the general fund. It would be an adjustment to the current appropriation for school district transformation. That's what I got to say at this point. So let us, probably nothing to share on the screen. We're just going to kind of run through it, or what works best visually.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'll take my lead from you. We are still working on draft 8.1. It's covered in my red pen, so you'll have.
Have we 8.1 posted?
I'm sorry?
This is a Matt question. Got it. Okay, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and put it up on the screen? You know, I don't know the answer to that. So I also will update the committee. The pre-K language that we heard yesterday, we will be folding this in as well. Based on the testimony that we've heard, it's probably going to be slimmed down to the intent section of that, and then the call for the studies.
No.
The other stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that frankly is to be done at a later date once the funding is better figured out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I talked about it also.
Yeah. Okay. See how we do here.
Okay, so we're in our amendments to chat. Remember, reader assistance headings are really helpful in this bill. So we're in the cooperative educational service areas. The next few sections, everything under this reader assistance heading started as just the change from BOCES to CISA. But now we've made some policy changes as well, now that you are setting CISAs in law. Page 1. Page 2. So I'm not going to necessarily go over line by line unless you want me to.
Nope.
Okay. So stop me.
Right. Anybody shout out to stop, because I'm also staring at my screen.
Only on page 2, we've added a new definition of CISA here. Not included in this asterisk is the definition for supervisory union, to make it clear that everywhere throughout this chapter that we're using the term supervisory union, it also includes supervisory districts. Section 603, establishment of CISAs, is where you set those boundaries. And so when I come in tomorrow, these boundaries will reflect the small changes you made for the CISA regions today, but it will look largely the same. So the Champlain Valley North Region CISA is formed of the member supervisory unions of, and then what I'm trying to do is list the supervisory union and its member school districts. That's going to be a mess when I have to come in a year or two and change it all, because now the landscape looks different. I do think it's helpful to have it all in one place. So if someone says, what's my CISA, it's easy to find it for all levels of users.
Great.
And then obviously, if it's a supervisory district, there are no member school districts, so it's just the supervisory district that is listed. Are you happy with the way? So it's the Chittenden Central Region CISA, the Champlain Valley South Region CISA,
This is a question over the articles.
The name,
It's just a question of whether you like the way the name is appearing. Yeah.
could it, we could read, I don't know. You could take out region.
Yeah, so that is a question. The map had region on there.
I like Chittenden Central Seesaw, Seesaw.
All right, we'll take a look.
Just like,
Knowing people are gonna use these terms a lot and then shorten them.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
So
what's
take out
in-
region.
Yep.
Okay. Work for me. Okay. So remember, no questions right now about any of the composition here, because I haven't updated it at all based on our conversations today. So just scrolling through the seesaws. Okay. So let me make a note of this. I am gonna have to come up with some language. I'll decide where it goes and I'll make my pitch to you tomorrow morning, to just make it clear that VTLC, can exist as it already exists, and it doesn't necessarily need to do anything extra. Okay.
we could force a name change on them if we wanted.
We're asking a lot. I will just say, and I know you've noted this before, but while you're removing the word region on page 6, you have southwest and southeast.
Yep,
I
yep.
just wanted to make sure.
And this has not been edited yet.
Got it. So we're still going to go back.
Should shock no one, that I rely heavily on the editors.
Yeah.
On page 4.
Did you say 4?
4. Yeah. Randall Supervisory Union, which is composed of a member school district of Champlain Islands United, a unified union school district, and South Hero School District, not Albert. What?
And Beth said this is all going to change overnight.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the decisions that we made.
Okay, I got it. I just,
I have been working on that map with you all afternoon, not changing these words yet.
Perfect.
Okay,
thank you.
got it. All right. So moving on to subsection B, bylaws. This is the requirement to have bylaws, which were previously articles of agreement. And then some changes to what those bylaws should include, mainly just to account for the fact that this is no longer a voluntary process and that you all are in charge of their membership. So there's no method for termination of a BOCES or withdrawal from a BOCES, and no procedure for admitting new members. That would happen through the legislative process. So I think technically, maybe for another year, you could consider some sort of charter change process. We haven't done that here.
I'm not getting Hartford in there. Yeah.
There's that. So because I know this question will come to me because I'm on this one part of the original BOCES, the memo and all the bylaws and all of that they were for, when this law is passed, that will change to this. Is that?
I'm contemplating some session law that says any BOCES or any seesaws that are in existence on such and such a date, their articles of agreement shall satisfy the requirements of, or, whatever.
Even better.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I assume that is the direction you wanted to go in order to keep them. If. Okay, board of directors, we have not changed anything here related to board of directors. Membership is still at the supervisory union level, and you still have this language in here about seesaw board of directors being appointed by the SU board. And it's either a member of the SU board or the superintendent or designee. And that is current law. We've struck through this because you don't need to put a limit on yourselves, but you did arrive at that magic number 7. The powers of seesaws. So in addition to other powers granted by law, a seesaw shall have the power to provide educational programs, services, facilities, and professional and other staff that in its discretion best serve the needs of its members, including professional development, curriculum coordination and development, and transportation. They've got to follow state and federal law, and then at a minimum, CISA shall offer services in the following areas to its member: special ed, business and admin, and union school district creation, consultation, facilitation. Executive director, body politic, corporate. You have not made any other policy changes. The rest of everything under this section heading or reader assistance heading is just that name change from BOCES to CISA. But the grant program, section 4, page 19, line 1, I think does deserve some attention.
All right. So we have the 10,000 that exists in law. And we actually had appropriated money to that, and there's 60,000 still there. So we're going to need more than that, because the 10,000 was really geared towards creating the Articles of Agreement. So we had testimony from Vermont Learning Collaborative, as he said, down in the Southeast, of an additional startup funds of $5,000 to cover other startup costs and membership in the national organization, which was 350 of that. So that's a total of 15,000 times 7, because we're having potentially 7.
You don't need startup costs for VTLC. It's only 6.
Good point.
It just occurred to me.
Yeah.
90.
On top of that, to incentivize getting rolling fast, I have proposed putting in there $50,000 per CISA for the hiring of their executive director. The rest would be sort of covered within the way they do it, which is through fees and through membership dues.
So there's only one executive director for the whole state, for the whole set.
No, 1 per 7.
Per.
Yeah, yeah. Because it is as best as a division of the state and needs such a
Are
director.
we paying the existing CISA to help us?
Yes,
They look at it.
yeah, coming up.
Okay.
So that would be another 300,000. And these numbers may sound big, but the money that we have appropriated to education transformation is much higher than this. And then we'll get into the facilitator funding down a little further.
So I think you could leave this grant program as is. It's got 60,000 still in it, is my understanding. You've got 6 CISAs. We've already changed the language to say that the grant, money goes to AOE. They already have the money to award grants to the CISAs created in section 3A, and I'll put in there with the exception of ETLC. And CISA shall be eligible for a single $10,000 grant. Grants may be used.
But we were gonna change that 10,000 to 15,000?
I think you need to do a whole separate,
Appropriation,
yeah. Oh, okay. So we can change this to 15.
right?
You want to change this to 15
Yes.
and then do a new appropriation. Okay. We can do that.
Sorry, why are we changing it?
So based on testimony that we received, so 3 years ago, we created the startup grant of 10,000. from the CISA that already exists, they said, to startup costs, it should be another 5,000. So we're going to up the 10 to 15 to cover that. So that's the change.
Okay. And is it okay if I work with JFO to make sure I get the appropriations, right? Okay.
Whatever you need from them.
So we're gonna keep scrolling because these are all those conforming changes. Anywhere where we had the word BOCES or Board of Cooperative Education Services, we're making the change to CISA. And Section 11 on page 25, we start all of our new substantive language. So we're still in the CISA reader assistance heading. Section 11 on page 25, line 15 is the transition language. So within 30 days following the passage of this act, each member SU shall appoint a person to serve on the board of directors of the applicable CISA pursuant to the law about board of directors. And then within 45 days following the passage of the act, the superintendent of the SU with the highest aggregate average daily membership of each CISA has to call the first meeting. They elect a chair, other necessary officers, and they're off to the races. Do you want to add anything else related to this transition?
I'd say nothing occurs to me, but very little is occurring to me.
So now we're in our new reader assistance heading of Union School District Exploration and Formation. Section 12, facilitator. So on or before October 1st, 2026, VTLC shall employ or contract for the services of, and then I think there may have been some policy decisions made here that are just not reflected.
Yes. Interestingly, though, forgot that they were an existing CISA, which takes us from 7 to 6.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, facilitator, sorry. Yes. Right, there you go. So, based on the recommendations of the folks at VTLC, we would be doing one facilitator per CISA, and the CISA is just sort of like breaking up the state into regions to do the group discussions. So we've got 7 of those, and then they recommended a lead facilitator who could assist them as well as oversee them. These would be what I'm trying to say. So the other ones would be in the field doing this work. They would have an overlying facilitator. So and I've sort of checked this number out with a number of people, $50,000 per. And I would just say, if you think about some of the areas where, it might fall apart fast, that, in many cases, the money won't be spent. And in other cases where could be a lot of work involved, well, then maybe they'll have to rejigger things. Anyway, 50,000 per consultant facilitator, 60,000 for the lead facilitator. That is 411. And then we asked VTLC to come up with charges that they would have as administrators of this. And they came up with 32,000, which is less than 10%. But they broke out based on sort of like reimbursing mileage and all this little stuff.
And I would say less than the 50,000 you're proposing for everybody else to get a
But
executive director as well.
yes. So
I'm just saying that seems fairly reasonable because I'd be arguing for support for them.
and so then the other,
Started this.
so the other funding would be the incentive to hire the first executive director of 50,000 each. The testimony we received was talking about a compensation package much higher than that. Which hopefully would pay for it. And hopefully the services would pay for it. But this is just to say, get it rolling and here's $50,000 to help out. But you're thinking it might be a higher number.
But no, I'm just saying that this CISA formed without a $50,000 incentive.
Yeah.
That everyone else is getting.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that, you know, I mean, I know you've had conversations with them and I have not, and that they're okay with this.
They're very excited.
And I will just say, I recognize that, you know, this is even lower than the 50,000 is going to each other that's being formed, just to get them to form when we didn't have that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not a problem.
They will be administrating all of this.
I mean, they're literally getting paid for work they're doing here, so that's, they're missing out on the 50,000.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'll acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
How do we know how much someone in that position should get paid? Is there like bargaining?
So it's not, these would be consultants who are working by the hour at a consultant rate. So they aren't being hired as an employee, they're being hired as
Right, but
consultants.
how does that rate, it's just whatever rate they charge.
I think it'd be negotiated.
So can we negotiate them down?
What's that? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's sort of a general understanding that consultants cost this much. Yeah, these folks hire consultants all the time.
Yeah, and I would just say there's a huge amount of work going into this that requires quite a number of hours, but there's also meetings, evening meetings, and I'm not sure who would be doing it, but we often would, I'm thinking back to Act 46, you
Right.
remember it? We would offer refreshments and have to sometimes pay for space to hold meetings in large groups. So I'm applying caution here
Yeah.
about the cost of this process of study committees, and worry less about negotiating down as opposed to whether this
Providing
can
sufficient
cover
support.
the costs of the study committees. Even outside of it, so.
Okay,
Fine.
yes.
Okay, I will just point out that on page 26, line 9, we do have the term employ. So VTLC shall employ or contract for the services of. I think that that's holdover language from when we were contemplating the CISAs themselves hiring or contracting for someone and taking into account that Union School District consultation and facilitation is a core function of CISAs now in statute. So it could have been theoretically an employee. For the purposes of this language, do you want it to just say contract for?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So study committee are required on or before December 1st. Two things need to happen. The facilitator needs to group the school districts together into the study committees according to the guidance you've given them, which is using your section 13 guidance and total ADM, the aggregate ADM of the school districts forming a study committee shall be a minimum of 2,000 students as practical. School districts shall be contiguous, and remember that is a reference to the school districts on the study committee, not the end result.
It's not about towns being contiguous, it's school districts.
Correct. And school districts on the same study committee may be members of different SUs. It's a may, not a shall. And then the second thing that needs to happen on or before December 1st, 2026 is that each study committee has to have its first meeting. And then here we have the language requiring everyone to come to the table. So notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a school district shall participate in the study committee it is assigned to by the facilitator. A study committee formed pursuant to this section shall adhere to the processes and requirements of Chapter 11. Subchapter 2 is just specific to the exploration and formation. The rest of the chapter is about how to run a union school district once you have already formed it. So we're gonna indent one level in and talk about some things that may deviate a little from chapter 11. So a study committee formed pursuant to this section may identify necessary or advisable school districts that are not members of the study committee or are not members of the CSA or both, and shall work with the applicable facilitator or facilitators to adjust study committee membership as necessary. Here's another money section here. Notwithstanding subsection 706B as it applies to study committee budgets and subsection 707A and B. The study committee formed pursuant to this section shall be funded through appropriations made by the General Assembly for this purpose. Provided, however, that if a study committee's needs exceed the appropriations provided, it may elect to increase its budget according to current law.
Yes, so when you and I were talking about that, I threw a number out.
Did I write it down? Yes.
And yes. So this would be to cover, I think, many of the things that Representative Long talked about, as well as potentially legal help or something. Yeah.
Did we, I guess I'm gonna ask, you might answer it, Beth might answer it. What was provided to study committees in Act 46?
I don't know.
There was a merger facilitation grant. But, I can pull it up if you're patient.
And I'm saying it because process, because we're following the law that we were Act 46 while she's looking, I'll just say. We're following the same law as we did under Act 46. There were community meetings, you know, outside of even just the study committee
Right.
together. And writing articles of agreement, which for some was simple and for others was really, really challenging and complicated. Attorney fees, those sorts of things. And I'm not suggesting another number. I'm just saying I want to make sure whatever we're appropriating here doesn't fall back and not allow the process to be fully. Just not, I don't know.
I think those are good words of caution. Hopefully this will be, because the process has already occurred, hopefully this will be somewhat from the like articles of agreement point of view. And the legal needs will be less invasive.
Agreed with all of that. Just want to make sure they were flagging that.
Do you want
I
to
knew it was more than that.
Yeah,
You want to know it was an Act 46?
sure.
I'm not reviewing all 64 pages of it right now. I was easily able to identify the merger support grant, which happened after formation,
After formation.
and the transition facilitation grant, which they were not eligible for until after voter approval of a plan of merger. I don't think there was any study committee money in Act 46, whether in Act 49 or previously in 153 or 156, I can't.
So, interesting.
Gonna have to go do some of my own.
So
Yeah, go ahead,
Well,
please.
from like talking to folks trying to pull some institutional knowledge and history on this, I got last week. Someone who was involved in several of them said Act 46 pulled from language from Act 153. That said districts could be reimbursed for up to 20,000 in legal and consulting services.
That
And that amount would then be deducted from the 150K transition grant to offset the cost of the transition to emergency.
that's and consulting.
Right.
She just said.
Yeah.
Legal and consulting, so
We're already funding.
I'm just expressing caution and I appreciate that because that rings a bell. Thank you for bringing up that.
That's helpful.
And we may be fine.
Can always be adjusted. I think that because of how long this process takes, I think for the big money needs for formation after, like when you have to merge systems and all of that, that'll be a job for the next legislature, depending on how many of these happen. But so let's stick with the 10 for now.
And we talked about this being a grant program run through AOE.
And the 10 would only be for merger study committees. So I don't want to give $10,000 to a merger study committee that gets together and says, never going to do it.
That's why it came at the end.
Okay, at the end, because it was a reimbursement model.
Because if you didn't form anything, you were gonna get your money paid back.
Do you want it to be reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Up to 10,000?
Yeah.
I'll take a look at the language from, was it 153?
153 is what the
Okay.
36 was based
Yep.
on.
Okay.
That's what she said. Thank you, Beth.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so we've gone over the budget language. In addition to the requirements of chapter 11, a study committee shall also explore the advisability and feasibility of the regional schools. If a study committee formed pursuant to the section determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district, in addition to the requirements in current law for what needs to be in the report, you've added requirements for the final report, including, and I'll let them speak for themselves in the interest of time, educational, financial, operation, financial viability, sustainability, etc. My favorite catch-all language. If the study committee, I'm on page 29 now, if the study committee formed pursuant to the sections determines that is inadvisable, then before the study committee members vote to dissolve the study committee, they also have to prepare a report. And then you list out what they need to include in that report, including specific references to any state law or rule that the study committee found to be an impediment to the formation of a unified union school district. And then if this decision of the study committee was not unanimous, what's the minority viewpoint?
Yeah, and I'll just add a little commentary of my own here. I think this is actually really important information to gather so that from a sort of larger perspective, maybe a legislative perspective, it's well known what the impediments are to merger. It might be, they come together and say the leveling up is going to cost millions. That's why we're not doing it. Or they might say we can't merge our operating systems. But so all that is just, I think, going to be very good information for the future.
So we're still in the inadvisable study committee. They are required to transmit their report to the board of each school district that participated in the study committee, the secretary of the state board, and the facilitator or facilitators assisting the study. And then members of a study committee that determines it is inadvisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district may form a new study committee or committees and may pursue any union school district formation option available under chapter 11 after the study committee members vote to dissolve the study committee formed pursuant to this section. So we're back out an indentation level on or before December 1st, 2027. Each study committee shall complete its final report. So you're giving them a year to finish their work and transmit it along with proposed articles of agreement as applicable. So the school board of each school district that the report identifies as either necessary or advisable if the study committee determined it was advisable to form a new unified union school district, or to the school board of each participating school district on the study committee if they determined it was inadvisable. Then on or before February 1st, 2028, a school board shall complete its review and provide comments to the study committee regarding the study committee's report and proposed articles of agreement. Secretary review. If a study committee, and this is all current law, lines 3 through 6. So if the secretary fails to submit the report and proposed articles of agreement with the secretary's recommendation, with the secretary's recommendations to the state board within 60 days of receipt of the report and proposed articles of agreement, or on or before April 1st, 2028, whichever date shall occur first. We added that in because if you kept the April 1st, there could be like this backlog. But if you tie it to the 60 days, then there should be a steady flow depending on when these study committees finish their work. So if that contingency is triggered, then the study committee transmits the report and the proposed articles of agreement directly to the state board. And then the state board is required to issue findings on or before June 1st, 2028. Vote to form a unified union school district. If a study committee formed pursuant to the section determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new union school district, the voters of each school district that is identified as necessary or advisable shall vote whether to form the proposed union school district on or before November 7th, 2028. That's supposed to be election day of 2028. Study committee status report on or before February 1st, 2027. So for the next session, AOE in consultation with the facilitators is required to submit a report to the education committees and the money committees with information regarding the membership and status of each study committee formed pursuant to this section. Section 13, I'm on page 32, line 9, is your guidance for study committee groupings. Pay no attention to this. It will all be overhauled tonight. But policy choice for you all. Do you want to call them group 1, 2, 3? Do you want to call them something else? What do you want to call them?
These are the hardest policy choices. Because
I
they're,
like 1, 2, 3.
yeah, the word was group.
It's just numbers, 1, 2.
No. 2. 1, 2.
Anybody want to express a thought that I can hear?
Go for it. Go for it.
I think we're sticking with groups then.
Ignore.
That would be team.
Ignore. Okay. Section 14, page 36, line 11, study committee results and analysis facilitator report. On or before January 1st, 2029. So remember, the vote has to occur no later than the election day prior to January 1, 2029. So that's about 2 months. Each facilitator employed or contracted by the, so I'll remove employed there, by BTLC shall submit a written report to the education committees with the results of each study committee overseen by the facilitator and information regarding whether, and if so how, the following issues impact or influence the final outcome for each study committee overseen by the facilitator, along with recommendations for legislative action needed to remove identified barriers to the formation of new union school districts. So the study committee reports where there is an inadvisable determination, this language does not have those reports coming back to you. You have the facilitator's report coming back to you. And theoretically, the facilitator would be aggregating that information. You can make the choice to have each individual study committee report come back to you. But I just wanted to point out that is not what the draft contemplates right now.
Okay. So this one did kind of make me curious because the facilitator could be long done with his or her work by January 1st, 2029. And they have moved out of state or whatever. Although we do say on or before. Thought here, but I do.
You have the lead facilitator responsible for doing this one final report, and then it would be between BTLC to manage what that contract looks like over a period of time. You want to do that?
Yes.
We're gonna check out that word employed
Yep.
again.
Although you may want to leave it open that VTLC, now that we are requiring
Yeah,
union school district consultation and facilitation as a core offering, you may want to allow them to, like, maybe they hire the lead. Like, I don't know.
could be personnel.
Yeah. So I don't think it hurts to say employer contracts.
Okay.
And if VTLC feels strongly about it, you can ask me to change it. Okay. So we're gonna have this be the lead facilitator. Does the report back? The
Yes.
final report back? Okay. And then the report back has to include information on whether these things came up, basically, or influenced the outcome. Staffing costs. And I think what we've been referring to as leveling up. Differences in operating structures, geographic and topographic barriers, enrollment patterns and projections, and anything else. Section 15, page 37, line 9. SU and CSA boundaries, Agency of Education report. So on or before January 1st, 2029, AOE in consultation with the study committees formed pursuant to this act shall submit a written report to the House and Senate Committees on Education with recommendations for SU boundary adjustments and CSA boundary adjustments that take into account the new union school districts formed or proposed to be formed pursuant to this act. And then now we get into the appropriations language. Study committee budget grant, we've got see. We changed this, right? It's a reimbursement model now. It's 10 for reimbursement. So this language will look very different in subdivision or in subsection A when it comes to you tomorrow, but that's where the study committee reimbursement grant is going to live. Subsection B, facilitator appropriation, is going to be, are these all general funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Question just to come up works.
Great.
Now that it's a reimbursement model, where does the money come from in the first place as they're doing the work? And they have to make payments and do things. Who pays for that? 'Cause it's a bunch of different SUs coming together and facilitators coming together.
Current law says you all chip in. And it's proportional to your
Current law
ADM.
handles that. Okay, thank you. Just
Good question.
gonna gum up the works.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then the CSAW startup,
Right. You'll sort of parse out which is reimbursement, which is paid up front.
yes, so my understanding is that the what was previously contemplated to be the CSAW study, or I'm sorry, the study committee budget is now a reimbursement model. The facilitator appropriation is a lump sum. The CSAW startup, I'm gonna work with JFO on how to adjust the current grant program to add 30 grand, right? An extra 5 grand for each, right? And then there's a new grant program for the ED
Of the seaside.
of the CSAW,
Yes.
and that's it. I think. Right? For now. Okay. So this will all look different tomorrow. We haven't really spent any time talking about effective dates.
On passage.
I sure hope that's before July 1st.
Just scare us.
If it's on passage, and passage is before July 1st, 2026, it almost doesn't matter because it's not going to pass until close to that time anyway.
Governor's signature. It's time.
So Just leave it July 1, 2026. People can sleep on that. That's an easy change for legislative council.
Yeah, yeah. We need to think through some other date, like the contingency date things that, but yeah, I'll sleep on it and be prepared in the morning.
All right, so we've worked through a lot. Act 73 in general. There's a contingency as to what triggers the foundation formula. It's envisioned that language is all the new districts are up and operational. We're on a different path here, so we're going to need to put in some other language that sort of is like, okay, are we ready for this or not? Kind of contingency. So we'll take up that topic tomorrow, however. That being said, everybody, I can't believe it's 4 o'clock and we just ran through our checklist of policy decisions. We may have some more tomorrow. But like just working through the maps and all of these things, and everybody's input was great. Beth, thank you so much for being the map master.
Never again.
And I just, love it or hate it, like it or everybody kind of pitched in and I just appreciate it. I'll say more things like that tomorrow when hopefully we have a vote on it. We got to get there first. But anyway, it's a long, hard day. We've been sitting here all day making a lot of hard decisions and having to understand some broad concepts. So just want to thank everybody.
We're voting on this bill tomorrow.
For
That's our goal.
open, for opening's sake,
I would have just gotten up.
Beth, can you remind me, like,
Right, yeah.
why /does intent language matter? We don't have that in there, plus I know we have to pull to this pre-K intent, so it feels like it would look weird if the only intent of the whole bill is about pre-K. We are that language coming. Feels like we're gonna need an intent section.
From a legal perspective, there's nothing necessarily wrong with having intent language just tied to, like, say, a reader assistance heading. In fact, I believe Act 173 did that with the independent schools language. Like it was a whole bunch of stuff about special education, and then there was independent schools language, and it started with intent language, like in the second half of the bill. So you could do that. Intent language is a policy choice.
I'll give it some thought. Which we can look back at what 73 had for intent language as well.
It's definitely gonna have some pre-K intent language. So
Yes,
it
couple of
seemed weird
paragraphs
to
of that.
only have pre-K intent. language.
Well, I'll have to look at it, but it seemed, if I remember correctly, a lot of the intent language didn't make it through to the final
In 73.
73.
So
So
looking at it
So
right
they-
now.
maybe it's the House tends to be more intent language than the Senate
Yes, it
does, or I'll have to look at it.
Go back to our house.
I'll have to go back and think about it.
Yes.
I know we've had a really long day and I also appreciate this day. I just want to make one comment that I think is the first thing that people are going to ask me. And so I'm assuming they're going to ask all of you this too. We are forming CISA's mandatory, and within that, we have guidance districts that are forming, and it's a map. And I want to make sure, so I'm going to ask the question, as Beth is still sitting here, that those are guidance only, that those lines around those colored maps, let's just say colored maps because it's easier, can be adjusted when study committees are formed. And the reason I say that is because we've had a lot of conversations in this room in the last 24 hours that talked about little issues here or there that we can't solve in this room or in this body, that they need to be solved locally when study committees are formed. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear. If my statement is true, I want to make sure that we're very clear with that as we're working on the final steps before we vote.
Would you confirm that that's true? And then I'll add a little bit more to that.
Well, I can't give you a yes or no answer.
But it is guidance only.
I would like to read you the language that you have so
Great.
that you can you can decide whether it
Does it?
meets your goals. So you have language that allows a study committee to identify necessary or advisable school districts that are not members of the study committee or are not members of the seesaw or both. And then the study committee would work with the applicable facilitator or facilitators to adjust study committee membership as necessary. And section 13, which is where your guidance groups live, says facilitators may form study committees that differ from the guidance contained in this section, provided, however, that a facilitator shall include the rationale for such choices in the report required pursuant to section 14. Instead, that's going to read something like, shall provide rationale to the lead facilitator for inclusion in the report required under section 14.
That work for you?
It does. I think that covers it. I feel pretty confident in that. I just know that I want to walk away from our part in this bill at this point in time, letting folks know that there is flexibility in this. And I think that language covers that. I would love anybody else's thoughts on that, including yours.
Well, I would only add to that and say, if somebody says, well, why did you make this decision or that decision? Always saying it's just guidance, but also we went about our work maintaining current supervisory unions and without breaking them up. So we made our line drawing decisions based on existing lines.
So I'm going to ask one longer, but a farther question, the next check question. If we set up the color divisions, if two separate colored regions want to get together and form one study committee, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
Just trying to get everything very clear
Yeah.
so that folks know what the intent is here, what the language covers.
And I think it probably bears repeating repeatedly that all of this is ultimately voluntary. In other words, a group of people can get together to form a study committee and say it is inadvisable for us to form a merged district, and the process ends once they issue a report. Yes.
I have like one policy piece that we have not talked about at all. No. The title of this bill. I kind of slapdash threw a title on it when I brought you the first draft, and it has just been traveling along with us.
Yeah, we-
An act relating to next steps in transforming Vermont's education system.
That
The world is your oyster.
is fine. In my mind, it was calling it changes to Act 73. But I like,
I
this
think
is a little more,
I think depending on what you want, this bill, my understanding is this bill is going to travel.
yeah.
And so I think this is a very broad title. If you are concerned about germaneness about anything, you may want to refer to Act 73 in the title. I'm flagging this because I do believe it is a true policy choice for this particular bill, depending on what the overall goals are for its many stops.
We get something about like an act relating to local collaboration in Act 70 or.
That's probably getting a little too down in the weeds. And and to be fair, it's going to include other things.
Pre-K.
Like
Well,
pre-K,
that's acceptable.
school construction aid potentially. So it also.
I just really want to sell that local voice voluntary part, because that's gonna be really important, in getting people to understand that.
Okay, I see our conversation sort of devolving. So it's probably a good time to stop. I am again just going to say it's 4:15.